So, with us this afternoon, it is our Alicante lawyers, Pellicer and Heredia. Welcome back, gentlemen. Pedro and Ignacio are here. Hope you had a good summer.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, we are a bit depressed because the summer went off.
So quickly. It's passed you by.
It was a really good summer this time.
Yeah, it was great.
Some quite busy action going on the housing front over the period. We spoke to Antonio a couple of weeks ago, and he said it was almost unheard of for him to be visiting the notary at least 3 times in August. But that shows that everything's been quite busy, and that's a positive thing for Spain. Of course, the new law on tourist licenses in the Valencian community kind of took people a little bit by surprise because it kind of came in from one day to the next. Perhaps we can recap and explain a little bit more about that, because you're going to be dealing with this on the webinar later at 5:30, aren't you, on your website?
Sure. Actually, it was kind of a shock, but it was coming because there was a lot of going on, a lot of fraud, a lot of illegal renting, a lot of prices going up. It was booming. Yeah. So I expected something to happen, which it did, and it just basically regulates for you to think what kind of business you want to go in, whether one or the other.
I understand it's good what is happening right now. Obviously, there are people, everyone has to understand, and now what should be adapted into this. Obviously, the lobby of hotels has pressure in order to say, okay, well, those people has apartments and properties with the license of touristic, which is direct competence with hotels. They need to high up the standards in order to the requirements in order to offer the same service that we do at the hotel. So
it's good for Spain as a whole. Then I guess
I think it's good.
The standards are being lifted in short-term rentals. Yeah. You know, and the hotels aren't losing so many rooms to them. Yeah.
So at the end, those who adapt, well, many of them probably are very okay, are fantastic. Yeah. So obviously eliminate as the fraud. Some fraud is being done.
Well, it's sort of like where tax wasn't being declared, for instance. That's one of the main things, right?
Yeah. Well, the tax here, we're going to hit two topics. One is whether it is allowed by the town hall for you to run this kind of business. 2, whether the statute of the community allows, because there's a lot of complaints of it. And 3 is the tax. I don't really think it was the tax the main topic, because that doesn't really affect much.
No, it's just really those ones who have properties that shouldn't have or shouldn't be offering this service as a touristic apartment.
Yeah, I think
so. The over-tourism factor, perhaps, was it then? Yeah.
I think as Pedro said, the hotels are legally renting their rooms for X amount of money, for obviously a lot of taxes, a lot of social security, a lot of issues, and I agree is unfair.
So their businesses were being affected effectively,
correct,
by the short-term lads. But,
plus the quality. Plus the quality, because now obviously they say, okay, do you want to choose this kind of business? Do you want to choose touristic license? Fine. Then you need to have all these bylaws, the habitation license, the cadastral thing, the energy certificate, everything 100% legal, plus complaints books, plus everything. If you are staying for up to 10 days in the
same
property.
Tenant with the same property.
So it's up to 10 days. Longer term lets are still okay then?
Yes. That's not an issue. So the bottom line of this law, it draws up a line where it says if you're renting out less than 10 days, then you should do all these bylaws and follow all these instructions. If you decide to go on the topic of long-term or short-term, but more than 10 days, you don't have to follow all the instructions of this law, but you cannot publish it as short-term, touristic. You cannot rent it out so you cannot compete.
You can't put it on Airbnb,
and give the same service.
Well, Airbnb, you could do it after 11 days.
Yes, but you're not up to that point.
Not up to that point. That's the bottom line, yeah.
I see.
And but I kind of understand, because it's unfair competition, because, you have a hotel, you have employees, you have all these taxes to pay, and then you're renting a room. This law is what really prohibits is renting rooms short term.
I mean, it also takes away from the economy, doesn't it? Because people then working in the local economy, if the prices are pushed up because people from Northern Europe and other parts of the world are coming who have higher incomes, the people who actually live and work there, perhaps providing resources for those tourists to come, can't afford to live in those places. I mean, we've just seen another story today where they're talking about teachers in another part of Spain who are being given accommodation via the government at a lower fee because they can't afford to live in the area.
Yeah, probably in Balearic Island, probably. This happening a lot.
Ibiza, probably, or Mallorca.
But at the end, this new law really is putting some limitations really on people in order to, because the demand is so high and the offer is quite high really. So in order to not to increase more the offer or not too much, even though the demand is going to high. So at the end, is going to, in some ways, to control that this do not go like all the cities, all the towns are going to be like for touristic. It will be like some control.
It's the tourist model that I think people have been asking for, isn't it? Yeah. Everything was just a free-for-all before. Yeah. And all of the questions that we've been hearing with the demonstrations over the past sort of 4 to 5, 6 months even, have been not about individual tourists, certainly about the amount of tourists who are coming, but not about the individual tourists themselves, but about the tourist model. Yeah. And this is a step certainly towards solving some of those problems.
Yeah, I really think it brings up the quality standards to the level of a hotel or similar, which I think is fair enough. You know, you want to compete with a hotel, well, at least have some quality on it. Mm-hmm. The only thing is the 10 days. Well, that criteria, I really don't know why they thought somebody will stay more than a week, but less of 15 days. Well, less of 15 days I could understand because in Spain you used to rent in the summer for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. It's very normal.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
You know, 2 weeks is not touristic. It's a bit more of temporada, what we call it, like it's season.
And the big sort of tourist companies, just in our headlines this morning, it was Brits and Germans again, the people who come the most from countries around the world. But again, they're generally around about the 2-week mark.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah. And so we really need to think here. Originally, everybody should have had a touristic license with all these requirements. What this law says now, and the bottom line of this law says that if you really want to comply with this model, then you need to be less than 10 days. And if you're going to just do something different, you need to inform the registry that what period of time you're not going to be a touristic apartment. So let's say I want to rent it out July and August. Mm-hmm. I should report it that in July and August, I'm going to be a touristic. I'm going to only, because I'm only allowed to rent less than 10 days, and it will be July and August. So July and August, my property will be rent out as a touristic, and the rest will not.
We see that a lot, don't we? Some people rent for maybe the winter months, and other people rent for the summer months. So, you know, it does make sense.
Whether it's worth for you as an owner to run through all this paperwork or not is a different discussion. You know,
we'll talk about the different types of paperwork after that, I think. But yes,
yeah. But the bottom line for me is that we need to really, as owners of property, to choose what kind of business we want to be in. Do you want to be in less, more, or joint is another adventure. So if you want to do,
so you can mix it up.
You can mix it up as long as you inform the registry.
I think that's a big deal, isn't it? It's the registration, because we all kind of see and realise that there are properties being let short term that aren't actually working with a licence or running on a licence.
Now it is a challenge for the community to have enough inspectors, but this is going to be easy from the neighbours.
I don't think they have enough.
That is certainly something Antonio was saying as well. In the Valencian community, I think he was saying something like 4.
Yeah.
But the problem, Carl, I think, we were discussing, Pedro and myself, the problem is not how many staff you have to as a policeman. It is more about your neighbour. If your neighbour gets pretty much upset...
Wants to inform, it will be easy to Google and say... Oficina Turismo, Oficina Turística, and then rapidly to say, well,
and then we'll start the file.
A number of councils, I think Polop and Denia, most recently Alfaz del Pi, have had their own local government enforcement on this thing about stopping tourist licence for 2 years whilst they can sort everything out and so on. Local councils can do that. But the thing that Denia Council pointed out, which I thought was pertinent, was the fact that they're talking about coexistence as well. So it's about whether these properties are getting on with the people that are living around them. Daniel's talked about the centre of town, and perhaps further out you can still have
that's exactly it.
But it's about the coexistence for people who live and work in the communities, being able to still afford what they're, where they are, and be able to live with the fact that you've got tourists throughout the summer. And other periods these days, of course.
Yeah, I mean, town halls have pretty much the number one power, because they need to control their town, so they could choose whether they're going to suspend it or not. So this law, at the end of the day, relies on town halls. If the town hall says, I think it was Carpe, that they're not issuing any more for 1 year, I think, or that's it. I mean, you don't have this type of model, so you could only concentrate on having your property rent out for long term or short terms, more than 11 days. You could still use the platforms, but it needs to be more than that. Now, as I said, the infractions, the problem you're going to find out is that the neighbours, if they're upset with the type of tenants that you're having, they will report it. And it doesn't matter whether they have 4 or 5 policemen with regards to this, because it's an administrative file. So they will start a file, they will check, as Pedro said, they will check that you're in breach, and they will start issuing invoices, fines, to people. So I think it's a reflection. This law, it should bring information to all of us to reflect on what kind of business.
So as a local resident, you can find out if a property is being let in the correct way with the right licence.
Of course. And now, another topic here is if I have less than 10 days, obviously the communities are going to increase the fees of the community to you.
Yeah,
20%.
so we're talking about the local community as, say, an apartment block, for instance, rather than the Valencia community as a whole. Yeah,
we're talking about you've got a license, you're renting it out as touristic, and now the AGM of your community is going to get together and say, all right, you've got this business, good, it's not prohibited by the statute, fine, but now we all agree that, or most of us, we agree to increase your percentage of payments up to 20%. So if I'm paying 100 euros every quarter, then you increase it into 20% because you've got
20 years more.
And that can be decided by the committee. And of course, it can be an urbanisation as well. Not
and it needs to be 3/5 of the owners, 3/5. And in case that someone do not go to the meeting, and obviously the voting session, it doesn't cover this 3/5, then it's informed with an acta, with a document, it's informed about the decision of the community, saying who has a vote in favor, who has a vote rejecting it. And then whoever owner didn't go to the meeting and do not answer will be like a yes, like it's confirming that they wanted to, even though they don't go and they do not.
They still have a chance,
anything.
An opportunity to.
So many communities will go to that point really on this.
So you've got a saying here with the town hall. You've got a saying with the community of owners, unless you have a villa, and then you have the bylaws of the community, which is only covers Comunidad Valenciana. So this doesn't apply to Murcia and Albacete and then the rest of Spain. So it's quite interesting, but for those who are renting out properties, is a good reflection here. What kind of business model they want to carry on with.
And all are still available, of course. The towns that we were talking about in the news yesterday was Alfaz del Pi, who's the latest, following Denia, Altea and Polop in suspending new tourist accommodation licences. It's initially, most of them are saying a 2-year suspension, and they'll get those measures together to regularise the unlicensed properties.
That's right.
Right. But it is what everybody's been talking about. It's about sorting out the tourist model and dealing with that as the issue, rather than, water pistoling tourists in the street in Barcelona. We'll talk more. Pedro and Ignacio are here from AlicanteLawyers.es. The surge in short-term rentals has led to concerns about rising housing costs and overcrowding in popular tourist destinations like Barcelona, the Canary Islands, the Costa Blanca and Costa del Sol. Local governments, as we've been talking about, have been implementing restrictions on these rentals to address the issues, and some places 2-year bans or Barcelona, for instance, banning holiday rentals short-term, like Airbnb, up to 2028. Now, some people may have suddenly found themselves on a different side of the law with this throughout August. So if somebody is now in a situation where they realise they need to get more paperwork together to be allowed to do a short-term let, what sort of things is it that they need to be able to be legal?
Okay, well, in the law, there's, someone could Google it, and it says about an annex, which is annexed to the law. It needs to be included some situations, apart from what it was. But what it says, minimum requirements, I'm just reading right now the law, it says, first one, have a plan in order to avoid evacuation for the building, it's like hotels. When you
Indeed,
go to a hotel,
when you see it on the back of the door, the evacuation plan.
And instruction of emergency and in different languages. And then the elevator, ground floor until floor number 4 is not required, but from there is required.
So anything above 4 floors?
A building with 5 floors must have an elevator. Okay, and then entrada clientes, which means there's a place that clients can enter in an area.
A separate entrance.
A separate entrance, that's right. And this is something I also knew, is a telephone direct line 24 hours for the client.
So somebody has to be there if they need some help or something to do with the accommodation.
Yes, 24 hours direct client service.
Okay, 24, all right.
Yeah. Okay, I presume that, for example, someone comes around like 3 o'clock in the morning and do not have a keys, and it has to be...
Well, actually, yes, because a lot of these properties now have those key boxes on them.
What happens is at the end they do not work.
Correct.
Yes,
and you can't get in half the time. Some of them don't work, or...
And some, for example, installation services, for example, this is hot water, for example. And then tomas de corriente en todas las habitaciones, which means is like you have access to electricity in all the rooms. And you need to indicate which is the voltage also. And list of telephones for emergencies. But it was anyway. What else? I think connection for internet. Let's say there are some other ones.
Heating.
So you have to have heating. Air conditioning.
Refrigeración.
And then one of the things that el servicio de recepción queda prohibida la entrega. So it is forbidden to give the keys in a box.
In a can't actually use those
in a public
boxes.
way.
Okay. I see. In a public way, so that would be on the outside of the building, for instance.
Exactly. So
they pretty much are trying to have a service, so a good service for a touristic.
But it's all about regulating the short-term lets.
Yes, only less than 10 days, Yeah, it's pretty much not like a hotel, but similar. You have a lot of service here. Okay. And what else? I think obviously you need to have the compatible license from the town hall, the habitation license, the cadastral reference, which needs to be.
And you were saying
that
there are different licenses. So now we're talking about a short-term license, a license for...
You don't need a short-term license.
More than 10 days or less than 10 days?
That's the license for touristic,
Yeah.
So the license you require is a short-term, less than 10 days, which is the touristic.
Okay.
So the town hall needs to say yes. We still agree having more touristic apartments. Here is the license because it's compatible with the area where you're in. Because in some areas they will block it. Some areas they might allow it. But you need to follow all these requirements. Not like a hotel, but very similar.
Yeah.
With quality standards. And one of the points, no keys in a box. Yeah, that's interesting.
It is, certainly, because that's certainly how a lot of the Airbnb short-term lets have been working. So, and the big investment here is in the tourism model for Spain, and the fact that increasing the quality for guests that are coming here. And we've heard quite a bit now about Spain investing in high-end luxury hotels. There's a lot of money going into that. And of course, if that's going to happen, then everything below that needs to fit and work within the same framework. If it's not working at the bottom, then there's no point in creating luxury hotels if people aren't going to be coming and renting the rooms.
Exactly. At the end, is increase the value, increase the Obviously, the standards and requirements in order to put in the same level as hotels. Yeah,
Yeah, we've heard that a lot. The islands kind of were talking about this maybe pre-COVID, or about actually trying to increase standards so that they can increase the level of people, tourists that are coming
I think so.
to their islands, without saying too much, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But that was certainly something they were talking about pre-COVID. So we had a bit of a gap there where, because things didn't get quite sorted out. And then, of course, that surge of people not wanting to just visit and go on holiday post-COVID, but also thinking about buying properties. We've seen a big surge in that as well. So it's something that's almost caught people. Well, it did catch people by surprise, but we're starting to see some standards being put in. So hopefully that's going to work. And it's still worth, isn't it, of course, buying a property to rent
of course.
In Spain, either for short term or for longer term.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this really affects your business. Probably is you need to adapt the business. But whether it's profitable or not, that's every single owner needs to budget and balance whether it's worth committing to all these rules. And whether they're going to make more money. Now, the prices, we don't know.
The demand, obviously, the price in order to invest on rents, we always say the good opportunity is when, obviously, you buy cheap. I mean, we have a client that bought 5 properties in the area of the south of Spain. And he has been making some buildings. And at the end, he has planned in order to get at least 90% profit, which is good. Probably in 10 years, we'll recover everything.
Yeah.
But we have many clients because we do also the accountancy and taxes, and we understand some of them are getting a lot more than 10%. We'll say, I mean, it's good properties, good locations, and obviously if you buy at market price, perfect. If it's a good location, good property. But if not, obviously it's good. To buy cheap is probably the key point, right? In many occasions.
Yeah, I mean, if you can cover your mortgage and still make a profit, then that's awesome.
Yeah.
You are making a value, yes, because of the increase of the property.
Yeah.
In the future to sell.
Yeah, and I think here the business is going to carry on. The prices, I don't know how they're going to change because now
they haven't stopped rising yet.
Correct, but now because of the change of the law, probably
it should stabilise now. We think, yeah.
Yeah, I think it will contain in this area. It shouldn't increase the price. Now, whether it's going to be, I don't know the answer, but whether the short-term rentals are going to be more expensive or not is demand and offer. We don't know how many
will be available.
Are they going to have a lot of them, or most of them are going to go into the short term? We don't know, Cole. Is it good? Probably next summer.
So we see the numbers. Yeah, we'll be able to work it out after that. Yeah.
And the demand on investing on property to live or to invest or another to rent is going to be higher and higher.
I mean, there aren't enough properties really now. I mean, there's so much building going on, and still, even those that are being built are being sold so quickly. So, that's. And again, the last time we saw that, and then 2008, and we had the banking crisis, which then burst the housing bubble in Spain. It's perhaps not in a similar situation by any stretch at the moment. We're not even looking at a ceiling right now.
It's increasing with some. I mean, low by low, but it's increasing.
Yeah.
And the demand is
definitely
starting higher. We have many clients that say, okay, well, before I keep my money in my bank, which do not produce
they don't
anything,
give you much money these days.
I keep it in a safe way, which is a property. Because my money really, it's happening right now. All the governments, central governments, are printing money like free. And the inflation goes up. So at the end, the inflation goes up. Your money is useless. I mean, day by day. So at the end, if you invest in property, at the end, it's something that, okay, the value is there. The property in long term will be high, obviously.
Talking with Pedro and Ignacio from AlicanteLawyers.es, Pellicer and Heredia. I mentioned earlier about teachers being given affordable housing, and I know I'd seen it and heard it somewhere this morning. I've worked out where and how. It wasn't actually Spain, but it was Portugal. But actually, it prompted Ignacio to say that the market there has seen a sharper rise and a bigger increase due to perhaps the fact that there's not as much space in Portugal.
Well, actually, I don't know the reasons. I've been there very recent now in Algarve, and prices are crazy. I mean, it's more expensive over there than here in the peninsula. Probably because there is not enough.
Not enough availability.
No, and not that many. The things you might find, they're good quality, but they're very expensive. But it doesn't correspond with probably the areas in the village. The village probably are a bit poor, and so it's a different, a different thing you could see once you go across to Portugal, and then when you come to Spain, you will see the difference. You will see the difference in general, and prices probably is not the same if you're in Ayamonte, for example, rather that you go Villarreal, and then. Is it a different world?
I know that Romy, who's from Villalux next door, and she's in with us on Thursdays every couple of weeks. She went beginning of summer and said that demand was incredibly high for properties.
They're refurbishing as well, but I heard they have a lot of problem as well, like we have here, about they have the touristic properties, and I think they always did a good tax program, so they approach a lot of investors.
There was something about TIE being relatively straightforward, wasn't there? Directly after Brexit, it was quite open on obtaining a TIE for a while.
I think there are a lot of Americans, a lot of British. But that doesn't last. I'm not sure, but that the tax regime doesn't last too much. We work with a lawyer in Portugal. When some clients just wants to go there and make inquiries about the law. But I'm not very much because they keep changing. Now I know they're trying to remove all these benefits they gave. And
it's too much of a good thing. It's increased demand to a point where it's difficult to cope, I guess,
It's hard to live over there because obviously the wages there are less than in Spain. And if you need a property, then there are no properties.
So the problems are exacerbated. We were talking before about people not being able to afford to rent in an area where they're perhaps working. Okay, thank you for that. Now, we've had a question about the new entry and exit system known as the EES, which we know is coming into force. And we've been looking at the EU websites on this. And there was a question from Nick, who has a golden visa. And found that all the time his passport was being stamped. And he does have a TIE, sent us actual proof. Look, there you go. He says that even though I have a TIE, my passport was still being stamped. Golden visa, TIE. For some reason, I don't think my TIE stops them stamping my passport because that's kept on happening. Of course, his question is now about the EES, the new system. Will he be able to not be part of the ES, walk through because he's got a TIE like the rest of us? That should be what happens, right?
So the question, Carl, is whether they will stop stamping, yeah?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
I am not able to answer that. I think, but this is just from the top of my head, you're British, then they stamp it, but you have a control. But they don't do it to you, do they?
Well, I think initially, certainly, there was a little bit of confusion, I think, when things all started post-Brexit. But certainly if you present your TIE along with your passport, it no longer gets stamped, certainly Alicante and Valencia.
But they scan it.
That I know. Yeah, you scan anyway. Or if you don't scan, you go directly to, which sometimes you still do, directly to a border guard. Now, as long as you present your TIE along with your passport, it doesn't get stamped. So perhaps that might not be or shouldn't be happening now with somebody who has a golden visa and therefore a TIE.
No, I haven't heard about getting stamp clients with golden visa. But
with this system, probably, we will check that. We will check that.
We'll check that out.
Certainly, from what we've read from the EU website, it should be that somebody with a golden visa and a TIE is exactly the same as a normal person who has a TIE. Just present that with your passport.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be stamped.
The TIE for the golden visa, it says literally autorización de residencia, which is really a residence card. Even though you live one day, or maybe you decide because you decide to live more than 183 days, you can live 365 days. But it's really even though it's called a visa, like a visado, golden visa, it is really a residence if you want to.
Yeah, you're still resident, aren't you? Yeah. The gold visa thing's still going, right?
Yeah.
You're still processing those?
We're still processing them and is working through. Now, the problem here, Carl, is we don't know until what date. But if anybody bought that property for that sort of price, my recommendation is to lodge it through as soon as possible.
Yeah. If you haven't actually applied, still can get it done. We don't know when it's going to stop.
That's correct. When the 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depend on politics.
So you come back after the summer, a busy season ahead. Do you think? What things are you dealing with most at the moment over the past year or so? What is it? People buying properties, mostly property purchases.
We are right now feeling that we saw a lot of relocation. Relocation means really at the end, mostly everything is like taxes, is like immigration, and is investment or rentals. I mean, it's those three pillars are really more demand in
like the cornerstones of the business as such.
Well, probably is demand on relocating to Spain, and then they ask about tax planning, immigration planning, and probably they want to buy or rent.
And some of them want to meet self-employment, or they want to attract the business here and create a business here in Spain. All these issues are where we are mainly received.
And still the nomad visa is something that is attracting people to Spain, right?
Yeah, we're dealing with a lot of questions about relocating as a nomad, and from the Beckham law as well.
Yeah, actually, we listened
There's
to
the Mbappe law now as well, isn't there? I'm not quite sure what the Mbappe law is or how different that is to the Beckham.
I didn't study that. Was it approved?
There's a paragraph in the new change about the professional sports, which has a different rules.
So that's so that the likes, I'm going to say, Real Madrid and Barcelona, and maybe sometimes the other teams, can attract certain types of players to the leagues, right?
Yeah, you remember when it was like
I remember the Beckham.
Messi and Cristiano, they had a criminal files against them because they were avoiding to pay taxes.
Well, the same with Shakira and her ex-husband as well.
Xabi Alonso, for example, he won the case. He won the case against the tax office.
That's true.
And tax office is very. Today, this morning, we listened. One of the ladies, she said, "Okay, Javier is being like a very good place for nomad who want to come here and work here remotely." And yes, I agree. Yes, well, Javier and probably a lot of places here in Spain. But Javier looks like we are having clients that are coming here to this area, and with this visa,
nomad visa. Yeah, I suppose that there was all of the issues about the golden visa. Eventually, at some point, stopping that people have then started to look at the other opportunities, of which there are obviously other ways of coming here.
I mean, it's not the end of the world if they change the golden visa. But if you have the investment done and then you have the opportunity, why not? I mean, it's a very flexible visa. It allows you to be taxpayer. It gives you a lot of time to renew, so it's 3 years. And at the end of the day, if you bought the property, that's it. So, but yes, there are more. Normal visa, I think, is going to be the top one for people relocating to Spain and working remotely. It's not an easy one because it's very messy, but we've been dealing with a lot of files like that one. So
about the social security, about the inscription of a company employer into the system.
There are certain regulations that have to be.
The agreement between Spain and on health, or the agreement between Spain and
A1, S1.
Exactly. So this it changed a lot on these situations, but obviously at the end it gets through.
But that's governments and legalities, isn't it? These things change and they update all the time, and that's why you need to come to a reputable company to make sure that you're on the right side of the law all the time.
But the key of the case for nomad visas is to get the A1 and the S1. S1 because you have health insurance. A1 because your company will pay social security in your home country.
So this is somebody who's applying for a nomad visa needs to get.
This is what we recommend to have. If they're able to apply for A1 and S1, then...
And you do that in your home country?
Yes, yes. Then we'll be able to legalize...
and things will be a lot easier.
A lot easier for you to pay less taxes here with the Beckham law, and for you not to pay social security here. And for you, if you're a non-European citizen,
I was going to say that's for people from third countries, obviously. But if you're part of the EU, of course,
you could still
no problems at all. Really, with things
because
generally.
If you are from a non-European country, you could get the visa. But if you are a European, you could apply for the Beckham law anyway with the I'm telling you.
Can.
Yes, you can. So you could get
it's a tax rule.
You still it's tax rather than residency or whatever.
Even the Spanish that being away more than 5 years could relocate into Spain and get this rule.
Nice to see you guys. We'll catch up again in a couple of weeks. Good luck with the webinar. I know you might have time for a coffee just in between now. Pedro's dying for one.
We need one.